Okay, wonderful. Well, a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This is a session hosted by Amplify, and I'm very delighted to welcome Meg, who'll be your presenter for today. Unfortunately, Sophia, who was also meant to join us, has is ill, so we decided to let her off and let her recover. And Meg will be your kind of host for today. To introduce myself, I'm Marissa Ellis. I'm the founder of Diversely. We are an inclusive innovation consultancy. We help organizations build thriving, high performing teams and to innovate more inclusively. And our community, if you like, is called Amplify. Amplify, Meg, if you go to the next slide, we can show people the QR code to sign up for anyone who's not already a member. Amplify is essentially it's a collective movement. We're a mix of founders and product people and innovators and academics and educators and students and business leaders who essentially want to see inclusive innovation to become the norm, not the niche. We run a range of workshops. Many of them are presented by our community members, such as the one today. We have there's the Inclusive Innovation Playbook, which is a kind of a great resource for driving and implementing inclusive innovation practices. So if you haven't already joined, you can do so. You can sign up to our calendar. There's a Slack group, there's a WhatsApp group. They're not very busy places. They're more kind of mechanisms to meet other members so that you can then kind of form connections with them, and all sorts of wonderful kind of connections have happened through members of the network. So join us if you haven't already done so. And Meg, if we move on to the next slide, I'll just share our sort of key principles for inclusive innovation and then how that kind of connects to today's session. So when we talk about inclusive innovation within Amplify, there are kind of 5 key things that we are promoting to become standard practice. Now, the very first one of these is that we should be designing beyond average. And this is sort of fundamental when technology is impacting so many aspects of our lives. We need to recognize that the kind of the myth of the typical user is no longer fit for purpose, and we need to design for the whole range of human diversity. And great products don't center average; they adapt to diversity, and with that comes an opportunity, right? It comes an opportunity to capture new markets. Our second principle for inclusive innovation is about widening participation, and this is about going beyond tokenism or exploitation and using inclusive techniques and empathy to involve diverse perspectives to ultimately co-create better and more relevant solutions. And I think Meg will be touching upon some of this in some of the guidance she's going to be giving around building effective design partnerships. The third principle is around challenging inequity. It's about recognizing that we do not live there is sort of structural inequality and there are barriers that exist in daily life, and we need to examine who holds the power, whose voices are missing, and where value and opportunity is unevenly distributed so that we can try and address that in our work as standard. We need to be accountable for our impact. We need to create solutions that do have a positive impact, and kind of shying away from the impact of our solutions, whether that's technology platforms that are enabling harm and sort of stepping away from the impact of that, or whether that's just being much more intentional about reflecting on the impact that you're having in an organization. That's what we fundamentally believe is essential for inclusive innovation. And the final principle is about measuring what you're doing, measuring belonging. Customer belonging, it's an evolving concept, but it's about enabling customers to feel represented, to feel respected, to feel empowered, to feel safe, to feel valued. And if we can create experiences that enable our customers to feel like that, we create better impact for our customers, and we create better businesses and better outcomes for those businesses. So that's all I wanted to share with you today, is to introduce Amplify, to remind some of you and to introduce for some of you the principles of inclusive innovation. And today's session, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Meg. She's going to be talking about design partnerships. And I think a lot of people don't sort of necessarily see the connection between design partnerships and inclusive innovation. But I think the key point about inclusive innovation is that when you start thinking inclusively around how you innovate, it becomes embedded into all aspects of kind of everything that you do. It's about widening that participation, getting better insights, and ultimately building better products and better commercial relationships, which is what Meg is going to be talking about with you here today. So, without further ado, I will stop talking and I will hand over to the wonderful Meg to continue today's session. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. I just noticed I'm getting like a crazy glare from my screen on these glasses. I'm gonna take them off so you can see my eyes. I know that like helps some people to connect and pay attention in a Zoom call. And we've got such a nice small group. I know a couple of the people on the call already, and Valerie's gonna be participating a bit, hopefully, in the call today, so that'll be fun. So welcome, and I'll just introduce myself a little bit, if I can get the slides to participate. So this is me. Please do connect. Like a lot of the reason why I'm putting this front and center is a lot of the work I do doesn't begin until some kind of connection is made. So if anything hits home, or if you think I can help you in any way, I'd love to chat. Even if I can't, sometimes I can connect you to someone else who can. Um, so please, yeah, I can share this again at the end if it's helpful. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. And we're gonna just dive right in. But like before we start, can I just ask, because I think we have a small enough group and we have enough time that it'd be nice to hear like in the chat maybe people can put in like, why did you come today? Like what's your connection to design partnerships? And like what's your context with design partnership as a concept? I think I have to pull the chat up because my chat window is like missing right now. There we go. Let's see. Maybe just are you using design partnerships in your business, or you can come off mute if you just want to talk as well. Nice. David, looking to educate the team. Cool. Nice. Enterprise clients. Great. Great activity for them. Oh, nice. Good. Robin, fellow lover of design partnerships, sounds like. Absolutely, Valerie, we know that it's good for you because we've worked on it a little. All right. Well, thanks all for sharing a little bit. I think we might be coming from maybe some different backgrounds. Um, but in the end, because it's such a cross-functional activity, design partnerships will and should benefit like almost the entire organization if done right. And that's like what we'll talk about a little bit today. Um, oh, nice, Joe. Yeah, I want to learn how to utilize them. Okay, so I'm just gonna like before I even talk about how they fail, I just want to talk about one of the biggest problems. I guess maybe it's also a reason why they fail, right? Is that design partnership as a term is sort of like misunderstood. So just starting there for a second, um, maybe the name is a bit of a misnomer. Like you think in hearing the word design that it is really only related to the design process, or it's about product or kind of like development of the product. Um, but design partnership is way, way bigger than that, and will and should benefit everything about how you're building your business model. It should help with your commercial strategy. It should be how you design your sales and go-to-market strategy and approach. Like it should, if possible, affect all of those things. And that's what I would just start with. Um, it's also a term that's thrown around a lot. Like I hear a lot of founders sort of saying things like, "Oh yeah, I work with, 5 design partners," and it might be something that comes up in an investor meeting. But I think without it being actually structured in a way that's going to be helpful. It is just a thing that people say they do. And I think what we want is to keep to these 3 points here on the right, right? You want to make sure you're that you're flexible in how you're designing your design partnerships so that you can actually get the learnings that you need and repeat them. So you want it to be a scalable engagement model. Um, and you want to always be learning. So rather than just chasing a deal, which is what I think happens in a lot of design partnerships, you'll lose then all of the signal that you're trying to get and the learnings that you're trying to get. So then it will just become an exercise of maybe building like custom software for one customer. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And worst of all maybe is that you may get to a certain point, realize you have to pivot, but then in the process have lost a lot of alignment internally. So sales will be off over here selling specific features to a design partner, and then product and the team that are building the software will end up having to pick up all the pieces afterwards, and that lack of alignment can be really detrimental to growing the business as well. Okay, let's keep going. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about like a framework that I've been working on for design partnership, which sort of like maps out the entire engagement life cycle and how um, that kind of works. And then we're going to work it live, and we're going to look at a live example. And Valerie did a workshop with me a couple of days ago, and I'm really excited. We're going to share a little bit of the output from that workshop and talk a little bit more at the end and have some Q&A. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Um, so uh, one of the things that you'll need to do is decide what you want to learn. This is probably like the most important thing. If you don't know what you want to learn, and then you are like, yeah, I have a design partner, now we're going to build it together. Um, what you'll find out is that all of your internal team will all want to learn different things. And if you've not designed that into the engagement, and even in brass, like in concrete terms, like into the actual contract that you have with the customer, then you're likely going to struggle to get what you need from them. And the design partnership will be less effective. Let's say maybe it won't fail, but it will be much less effective. Um, I just want to just flag, I think if you guys have questions along the way, I really want to be interrupted in this talk. So please do ask anything. Um, so before you go looking for who should be your design partner, what you want to know is um, like, oh, is this actually design partnership, or is it an alpha, or is it a beta, or is it a pilot? And I think those terms are thrown around so much. I'd love to hear like you can come off mute or just put in the chat like what do people think those terms mean? Like what's the difference between an alpha and a beta and a pilot and a design partnership? Does anyone have any answers for that? Because customers definitely don't know the difference, that's for sure.
I mean, I always consider a pilot as something which is more commercial, where the potential client is probably putting more skin in the game. The proposition is more evolved. It's at a place where, this is something we believe in, that we're going to be able to roll out, that we're going to be able to scale, where an alpha may be like more conceptual. We're just trying to validate a hypothesis, or maybe a beta is a bit more evolved. But yeah, I think a pilot is something where it's like we've really got to like we think we've nailed the proposition. Is it something people are we going to be able to deliver the value based on what people have paid for? That would be my
Yeah, yeah.
tip.
I wanted
That's
to
great. Any other thoughts?
uh, can I ask a question? Because my understanding was that you could use design partnership for alpha, beta versus pilot or pilot, whereas you are distinguishing these four concepts. So I would love to learn more how design partnership is completely separated from alpha versus beta versus pilot.
I I don't know if like to wax philosophical, I don't know if I even personally separate them like exactly, but I would say that these terms are sort of like interchangeably used by both teams building the products and the businesses that are going out to sell, and also the customers participating in those engagements. I think most, like, let's say you're building a B2C app or something and you're running a beta, like, I think most of the time those users don't think of themselves as design partners. I think there are probably principles of design partnership you could apply to any of those things. But I think in terms of what, was it David who just shared? I think in terms of what he was saying, like, you in a pilot, you've got a product that's like ready to go to market or you believe is ready to go to market, which I think is a bit different from an alpha or beta scenario. And in a design partnership, the reason you're engaging usually is because you don't have some part of the answer to what that thing is that you want to bring to market, or either how you want to position it, or how you want to bring it to market or sell it. And so some part of that needs to be, I think, a bit less developed, at least, if not completely 0 to 1. So design partnership is really ideal when you aren't ready, like you don't have a thing yet, and you want to partner and build together. So in terms of what Marissa was saying, like it is it's an inclusive practice because you've decided that instead of building, validating, you're going to build and validate with your exact ICP. So in the context of a B2B business model, or maybe even like some marketplaces or some of these other models that aren't like pure B2C, where it's a consumer application, it's very ideal because you can learn across the board all about your customer at the same time as building a product that actually fits that customer. Hopefully that answers your question, Joe. I don't know, but I think it's like it's a bit of an it depends, or maybe like a philosophical discussion, but I think that's how I think about it. Any
I
other
think it's
thoughts from
also
anyone in the
I think
audience?
it's also really
Yeah.
important to be clear on what your customer expectations are, because in a lot of so I was head of product for a number of different software companies, and we ran a lot of pilots with enterprise customers. But at that point, from the customer's perspective, you're not piloting does the software work, you're piloting does the software work in the context of the customer's operational environment, and in terms of their framework. They're not helping you test whether you're finding product market fit, or so I think you need to think about what's in it for the customer and what are their expectations, and that then sets you up to have a positive and productive relationship. Because if you're going into a customer with them knowing, yeah, we're building our prototype and we're building this out for the first time, and they know that they're part of that, versus you're going in and you've got a product but you haven't tested it in different operational contexts. It's a completely different scenario. So I think the piece around managing customer expectations, and even knowing yourself, which comes back to Meg's point around being clear around what are you trying to learn and what do you already know, is fundamental.
I love this example, Marissa. It's actually really perfect in sort of thinking about like your product development life cycle and the life cycle of like developing your commercial and like operations and like rollout modeling. So like that for example could be, you could apply the principles of design partnership to designing how you embed this product into businesses. So you could be running a pilot and then engage the way you're engaging with that pilot customer could use the principles of design partnership. And if you go to them and you say, you know, we do have a product, we believe it's going to be valuable. What we don't know is how it fits into businesses just like yours. They understand then immediately what you are trying to get out of that engagement and what they can expect. and what they'll be able to help shape. So if you know that you're working on it together or that they're working on it with you, they'll have this amazing value exchange. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. So I'm going to keep moving because otherwise we'll get stuck. So a really great,
Oh, can I just
difficult example.
ask
Oh yeah,
one
go ahead.
about the paid versus
Oh
unpaid?
yeah,
That
and we
that
can go back to that.
that to me is like a really big thing. I mean, in an ideal world, we all want to get paid when we're bringing something new to market. The reality is, and I think certainly currently, and certainly with some of the enterprise customers that I'm there seems to be a trade-off between, well, I'm not going to do a design partnership until I've got a paid client, but no one's actually paying for this stuff at the minute. Versus, well, do I just keep on waiting, or is it more progressive to even in an unpaid incident, in an unpaid context, there's going to be more value to get. So when I see this, I'm planning on doing some design partnerships, but now I'm really questioning whether I should not do them until someone pays me. But I haven't been able to find anyone to pay me in a year. So
Let's let's talk about this. I'm so glad you called me back to this slide to just touch on this one point because I'll touch on it more as we go. But I think until a customer is paying or knows that they're in a real commercial agreement, they do not respect the design partnership in the same way. So they are not like a user tester or a like validation test. They're not a research project. They're like a real customer. And if you, we're going to look at the kind of life cycle in a second, but if you want them to end up being your star customers off the back of a design partnership, um, they need to feel like it's a real engagement. So there's all sorts of ways to commercialize around design partnership. And depending on the type of thing that you're doing, like let's say, we're going to go through values example, but I think um, yeah, where that's more of like a pilot. If you're building 0 to 1 on a new product, a new feature, or let's say a rebuild of a platform, you might engage with a design partner, but you'll want them to feel like they're getting a real platform, right? Even if it's not finished. And so there's always like discounting, there's giving them a year for free on a longer contract. There's so many ways to shape the pricing, and that all comes out in the wash if you use the framework to actually spell out the value exchange that happens during the design partnership. So once that's clear, it becomes much easier to test how you'll sell it, and we're going to talk about that too in just a second. So I'll come back to it, I promise. So like
I
a
think there's
really difficult, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to build
Was
on
there
what you were
another
saying
question?
and to say, I think you can actually be quite smart about positioning it as a benefit to the customer to pay, right? Because if a customer is not paying, it means that they haven't gone through the internal, and it depends on the size of the customer here, but if we're talking about large enterprise customers, um, they haven't gone through the internal wranglings to get anyone's buy-in. They haven't
You
sold the value internally, right? So
exactly.
if you don't force them to do that, you don't get the commitment, you don't make the headway, you don't get the signals in terms of what's attractive to them or not. So for whoever your individual stakeholder is, it's actually to their advantage to kind of have to push this through to get a kind of a commercial deal, because it benefits everyone, and it also forces you to deliver value, right? It means that there's going to be what Meg's talking about, a value exchange.
Okay,
I
thank you.
have I have nothing to add to that. That's exactly it's almost exactly word for word what I would have shared. So definitely. So kind of a tale of like a cautionary tale. I worked at a startup which was like under 30 people the whole time I worked there. Like, grew and shrank again and grew again, but very small. Who engaged with ING, like one of the world's biggest banks, as a design partner. And some of the things that I found that went really wrong with this happened all throughout these different like parts of the life cycle that we're talking about. So when we talk about design partnership, we're thinking about this like the middle bit, right? Where you're like talking to users and getting in with the business and kind of shaping features and doing like feedback loops and all this stuff. But actually, the parts that make that really difficult happen during contracting. They happen during the shaping of the engagement, actually. And whether or not what you've done in those feedback loops actually is usable and scalable enough to be able to sell again, to Marissa's point. With ING, what happened was we engaged with a part of the business that was not the normal buyer for our ICP, right? So we weren't engaging with a realistic buying committee. We weren't selling into them. So it was an engagement with the innovation team, which was great, but the innovation team is not probably going to be our normal buyer. So what are we learning from that, right? The innovation team also only engaged with partners like us in a certain way, and they wanted a statement of work and a custom piece of software. And we had to wrangle and wrangle and wrangle until we finally got to a place where it really just didn't feel like a design partnership anymore. So then it felt more like we were chasing the deal. We were chasing the deal more than we were actually going to learn from this. And definitely the things that came out of it ended up taking a huge portion of our roadmap, so that 9 months or something of our roadmap was very specifically building features for this engagement with ING, because we'd secured this customer. And unless you want your entire business to be resting on a single deal or a single customer, which is very risky, it's a risk you can choose. Everything is a choice, right? Like none of these things is a never, never. But until your internal team has the conversation around what does that risk actually mean for the business and our growth as a cross-functional team, to the inclusion point, like if you're not all talking about that, then you're on different pages. Sales is chasing the deal, maybe the founder's chasing the deal, and this team over here is trying to, innovate and build a great product that is like actually repeatable. And when those teams and customer success, who's managing the current client base, are all on different pages, it becomes, that this engagement could actually undermine the good work that the team already has planned for the year. So this is my cautionary tale. This is what our engagement looked like with them. This is how I mapped it out to show them what being a design partner with us would look like. And, even in that very sort of imperfect example, this kind of output was so important for them to buy in and actually sign the deal and agree to work on it with us. Matthew, to your question, it's like, what do I need to do to like get people to agree to do design partnership? Like having a very clear visual of what it means helps them understand the value exchange. So the first step is obviously to find who the design partner is going to be, right? And this is a big question for like a lot of founders. They go like, oh, well, who should I do? Who should I do it? You definitely don't want to do it for a customer who's just curious about your product, or like they're just entrepreneurial and like want to help build something. Like you need to find, like once you've decided what you want to learn, you need to find partners that actually match your ideal customer, or who you think your ideal customer is, that have a genuine pain that matches to your solution, right? You need to have a champion inside the business, and this is not necessarily always the buyer, but someone who's going to be your connector and who will make sure that the things you need to learn and the places you need to connect to within the business to get that learning and those feedback loops are on site. And so that champion work is really, really critical. You want to get a green light for the design partnership, but sometimes that person who green lights the design partnership, the example with the company I worked at is a perfect example. Like the team that greenlit the project is not the buyer, but luckily we did have access and some access to the actual buying committee within ING, who would have purchased our product as is for for their specific organization and the pain points they wanted to cover. But that was like big borrowing and stealing, right? Ideally, you want to have a good understanding of who that buying committee is. Valerie, you have your hand raised.
Do you
think when you're doing outreach, you should be targeting the champion or the buyer directly? Mm. Well, if they're the same person, then easy, right? But if you know that they're different people, um, I don't know. That's a thing that I would test. I'm actually not sure. It probably depends on what you're selling and how difficult the sales process is, or like how many stages and like how hard it is to get at that budget. If it's a budget line that's quite accessible and the buyer has quite a lot of autonomy over decision making on that budget, you might find that you can start with one and then rope in the other, or target them both at the same time and have, equal success. But it's a great question. And Valerie, I don't know, like we should talk about it in your example, like, and maybe we can have a little chat in a second. Um, Contract based on shared goals. Yeah. So you basically, Matthew, to your question, like you want to have in your contract, or it could be like an engagement charter, or, like you could call it whatever you want, but the actual thing that says this is what we're doing and this is what you are doing and this is how we're going to work together for this design partnership, that needs to have the shared goals as a part of it. And ideally, it is a commercial agreement of some type. And that shouldn't include a feature spec because it's not a statement of work. And you don't want to be building custom software unless that's what you want to do and that's your business model or you want to take that risk. Um, that is my 2 cents and recommendation. Do not go there. Do not put features into a contract. It's not a good idea. Don't go too many. Don't have 10 design partners at once. It's not gonna work. You can have 10 customers, you can have 100 customers, but only have a couple of design partners. I would say like for a larger team, even like enterprise wise, like was it Joe, someone said they were working with enterprise customers and wanted to bring design partnership into the as a model. Even if you have a big team and you can support all the, jobs to be done internally, doing it well takes a lot of like coordination, and you're going to want to go deep with one rather than do like kind of a poorer job across a lot of design partners. So I would say this idea that like I have more design partners than the next guy, that's like not a thing. Um, Having more customers is definitely a thing, but having more design partners is not necessarily better. Um, and you want the overlap between them and the differentiation between them to reflect what you want to learn. So like, let's say you don't know your ICP yet for sure, then have one design partner of like 3 types so that you are learning about your ICP as a part of the design partnership. Does that make sense? Everybody's camera off, so I'm not sure, but hopefully that makes sense. Cool. So you're gonna gather evidence. Like this is like the meat, right? Like this is the part that everybody like thinks about when they think about design partnership, right? And you're building together and you're, doing the feedback loops and blah blah blah. This is it. So you're going to orchestrate feedback loops and design them purposefully. So like you saw the thing I had a couple slides ago, this thing, like you're going to want this before you start. It can always change, but you're going to want this because as you learn how this goes, this is your blueprint for the next design partner. You want this to be not a one-off, it's a repeatable process. It doesn't have to be custom, because it's not a custom agreement to build software for one customer, right? It is your process. You're going to want to test your hypotheses and not do feature requests. So this will keep you from the feature factory side of the pendulum swing. You don't want to veer that way. So if you don't want to veer that way, then you want to stay in the place of like understanding the problems and working on those problems and those solutions together. And you want the product team and your business to retain control over your roadmap and what you're building. This is how you can use design partnership, but you're not reliant on it. for product growth. Reading real signals means having access to the team that's actually buying. So Marissa said this almost perfectly just a couple of slides ago. I think you want to make sure that you're actually testing willingness to pay, like that you're actually talking to them about value perception. You're talking to them about price and value perception and how they relate. You're talking to them about positioning. You're talking to them about how they see the value being realized in their business. And you're having those conversations on a regular feedback loop that's been designed into the agreement. One partner dominating the other is like a danger zone, customer specific roadmap, and gatekeeping. So like if they're gatekeeping your access or you're having trouble or your champion leaves the business or whatever, like these things are things to mitigate. And ideally, like they turn into your best, like most amazing customers. Like I've seen amazing things happen with design partners where they like sell your product for you. Like you could run webinars with design partners who have become your like champion customers, right? And it goes beyond just referrals, right? It goes into the realm of like, I'm going to hold a webinar and demo, and this customer is literally going to sell that feature for me. I don't have to do it. They'll talk about their own business case and how it helped them and they'll be excited because they know it back to front because it will be something they built with you. So there's so much value from a sales and positioning perspective as well. Anything else on this? There's like so much more we could deep dive on any of these steps, but yeah. Okay. Well, I'll keep going. So this is like the who, right? You know that like there's a lot of skills for what I'm talking about. There's like kind of a lot of skills involved to do it really, really well. I've tried to map them generally. Like, I mean, anyone could have any of these skills and be doing any of these jobs, like mix and match. But largely, I have seen these skills exist in the functional areas of a business. And so you can see there's literally everything from across like product design, technology, sales, marketing, and customer success, like all of them can and probably should be involved with a design partnership engagement. And you have everything from sort of program and product management skills and design, workshop facilitation, all the way down through relationship management and expansion work. So you really want to be kind of looking at what you want to learn and deciding, okay, what are the skills we need? And I think now is when we can start to dive a little bit into Valerie's example. So I started pulling some screenshots in from our workshop, Valerie. I was wondering if you just wanted to take a minute and just introduce your business and what you guys are doing at Koala.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Valerie, and Koala for Work is B2C and also B2B2C. So what we've built is a tool that takes actions and breaks them down into tasks and then builds a day for a user. And what where this is coming from is that as someone with ADHD who's worked in a corporate environment, there are a number of adjustments and accommodations that really help us, but often they are siloed to whatever manager can deliver them. So what we want to build is a scalable solution so that people can get access to the ways of working that works with their working style.
Amazing. And so needed and so awesome. Like I love the idea behind Koala. So we in our workshop we talked a bit about what does the design partnership team look like on the customer side for Valerie and on her side, right? So obviously on your side, Valerie, that's mostly you, right? And kind of your like fractional support team that you kind of engage as and when you need them. But on the customer side, there's kind of a few unknowns and a lot of complexity. So we were starting to map out over here. You can see like who the buying committee is, and then sort of thinking through, okay, well, who's deciding about the design partnership? Who's the champion? versus who is the actual buyer of this in the end. And Valerie, one of the things I think I remember is that we don't know for sure yet who the buyer is, right? That's one of the things you want to like learn about through the engagement. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of what Valerie wants to learn is more on the side of how does the commercial cycle, like what does that look like? And Marissa, to your point, like also how do you embed it in the business and how do you match that onboarding and like sort of the introduction of the software into the business? Like how does that match to their specific needs and the culture they're trying to build? So yeah, so Valerie, do you have like every single one of these skills perfectly like already inside of you? I'm guessing no,
Definitely,
but
definitely not.
so like Valerie can look at a list like this, right? And think about which things particularly are going to be important for her engagement. And then she can think about what she has that's missing. And she can be honest and look for help. And she can involve others as needed because she knows, right? But until we like actually think about it at that level and think about what's needed to make it a success, it's really hard to kind of flag what's missing inside of ourselves. So as a solo, as a solo founder, I know that it can feel really lonely, but I think when you get concrete about skills and jobs to be done, it makes everything a little bit clearer. Let's move on. So this was her engagement funnel, and I'll just talk through at a high level. These are what we've just been talking through, so you can kind of see of like find and qualify, align and engage, like, do actually make the agreement happen, your collaboration step, validating your hypotheses and learning about value perception, and then converting and keeping that customer forever and making them into your most awesome uh like referral magnets. Um this is where we got to, and I don't think maybe it's not done. What do you think, Valerie? I think there's probably more to add to this, but we started to map out how she's thinking about it. And I'll just really high level so that we have some time for Q&A at the end. Um we had sort of these are the qualifiers that she's thinking about over here on the finding qualifiers. She's thinking about that for what kinds of businesses she believes would benefit most or be the right places to start. But then obviously she still has questions around like who to contact. So a lot of the like testing and design around getting this right or finding the finding and qualifying part is going to be some iteration on Valerie's side, right? She's going to have to learn as she tries to go out and sell the design partnership. And then as you move into aligning and agreeing on a commercial agreement, Matt, to your question earlier, like designing that and making sure that that value exchange is right is going to be probably an iterative process as well for Valerie as she starts going out and pitching and trying to sell, working with customers, because not because she doesn't know what she wants it to cost in the long run, but because she needs to price and build the model's pricing itself. So like what does the design partnership worth is kind of the question that needs to be answered. And then she's got collaboration. She's got like, I want, this is what she wants to learn. She wants to test the existing platform. So in her case, it is more of a pilot, actually, in Valerie's case. But she wants to utilize the principles. Joe, to your question earlier, she wants to utilize the principles of design partnership in how she approaches her pilot. So this is what I call a value exchange, but I mean, you could call this whatever. It's basically like this is what we give, this is what we get, and this is what the customer gives and what they get. And that has to be balanced and feel good, or the commercial agreement will fall flat and probably the relationship will sour. So the balance here is really important, and this balance can shift when things change throughout a design partnership lifecycle. So this is what you want to kind of keep top of mind, put into your contract, have as this core part of your sales process. And really design like with your internal team, like what this looks like so that you can test it and see if it resonates with the people that you're going out and trying to find. So one of the questions we got from Valerie actually, and also from the last time I ran this workshop was around selling. Was it, I don't remember. Yeah, Matthew, I think it was you that brought up like this bit about like trying to find them and sell them on design partnership and like, price it. Like how do you make people get people to pay? Besides like payment and sort of like pricing questions, like how do you guys think the sales funnel for design partnership like would look different? Like what are some of your thoughts? You can come off of mute if you want. Or put it in the chat, either one. Lorraine, I am going to come to your question, I promise. About measuring. I'm going to save it for a second. Okay, I'm just going to talk then, I guess, if nobody, or are people typing? I can see people looking down, but I can't tell. Maybe they're typing. Any thoughts?
Sorry,
No?
can you question again? I missed that. My computer was jittering.
Oh yeah, it's fine. The question is like how does the sales process look different? Like what changes about selling a design partnership versus just selling your product to a customer? How is it different?
Um,
If you were actually like making a playbook, right? Like what would look different about that playbook? Any thoughts?
I think it's a bit easy to get into. I think there's a barrier that's gone when you're talking about if you're talking about a partnership and a value exchange. I think there's a bit more trust between you and the potential client. But as soon as price comes into it, and not just the elements of, and it depends on your customer base, not just the elements of have I got budget for this and am I going to get a return for my investment, but as soon as the price element comes into it, and then teams are thinking about procurement and then thinking about who they need to engage and who they need to sell it in, barriers just go up and teams can say, is this worth me discussing now? But I think if it's not involving price,
Mm-hmm.
then actually I think there's a lot more open-minded to explore the proposition and that value exchange. So that's what changes. That's what's changed for me in terms of when I've worked as a buyer of design partnerships, but also selling collaboration as well, is that it's usually the element of price which closes the mind to explore
Yep.
more areas, unless they're already unless you're already an established customer with quite a lot of businesses or quite a lot of customers, or you may be working with them on different parts and have that relationship. But if you are engaging new business, um, I think the price element closes the mind.
It can. And so what can happen too is when you get someone who's like really interested, like a champion who's really interested in your product and like actually wants to connect because they like think it's a cool idea. What you don't get from a partnership like that is potentially the knowledge of how you're going to actually sell it because you need the complexity from the process of procurement to like really understand because that is going to be your business. Like you're going to have to sell it through to that procurement process. So even if they don't get involved directly as the decider about the design partnership, if there's no discussion with an engagement with that team, it can be either very complicated or impossible to learn about that
Yeah,
um,
suppose it depends on
during the course.
I suppose it depends on the objective, doesn't it? Of what I suppose the value you're looking to get out. But yeah, I totally agree that the learning of the procurement process itself can be more valuable than anything. Um,
And
so
actually tying to procurement process or revenue, like it's not really revenue, but it's like spend, right? Like spend versus value. Like
Mhm.
tying yourself to that is not necessarily as evil as it sounds, right? Because here's the deal. In the end, you have to gauge whether or not the value you derived inside of that business actually warrants them paying.
Wow.
And like you you want to get that signal like as a part of the thing. And in fact, if they're not thinking about that, what incentive do they have to get you users inside of their business and to push your platform for their people? Like there might be a champion who believes and is using and is giving you feedback, but their team, to get their team to use it, the business has to have a feeling that their business is investing. So this is why I would encourage as much as possible either implementation pricing, like 2-year contracts with the first year free, like discounted, these kinds of things, because it then feels like a real engagement to them and a real investment
But
for their business.
can I just ask, how do you think things have changed in the past 18 months? Because I totally agree with you.
Because of AI,
But yeah, because I think we're in a completely different context now. I think that the
because
way,
people are building their own tools.
not necessarily, no, not necessarily. Well, I suppose a question out to everyone is, how do you think the approaching a design partnership and some of the principles that you've just laid out has changed, and what are some of those factors that have changed over the past couple of years? So, for example, what we're starting to find is there's less commitment to want to talk to potential partners because no one knows where AI is going, and therefore no one wants to make the wrong move. Or even when you're talking about a platform, there's so much work that needs to happen around operating model, not just about a particular piece of technology, but actually it's about different ways of working, and all those kind of things. Or indeed, as you just said, teams wanting to focus on building them things themselves. So I'm just curious in terms of what you think may have evolved over the past couple of years, which are bringing new challenges or maybe new opportunities.
I'd love to hear from others. Just have a couple of minutes left if anyone has anything they want to share.
I think it emphasizes the importance of demonstrating the value and having a real moat around what it is that you can do. I think the kind of advent of AI has created a lot of uncertainty and it's created rapid change. And I think it forces kind of startups and entrepreneurs to be even more intentional around how do I get the attention of the buyers, and how do I um, demonstrate the value of what we can do, not just in the current climate, but in the
Bye,
future.
Joe.
So you need, because things are changing, you need to show. Like I was talking to a founder yesterday, I do some startup advisory, and we were talking about he's starting a new design partnership as it happened. And he was
Ooh,
talking about actually needing to be flexible around what they're building, and not just building for the current operating model, but building for what the future
hi,
model might
David.
look like in this kind of fast-paced world. So I think you're right to kind of question it and challenge it, because I think it does change things. Um, but I think it just makes it even more important to do this stuff well and be really kind of clear on what your value is and what you bring.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think that it depends is like the only other thing I would add. Like it so depends on what budget line you're going after.
Mm.
Um, like is that budget like shrinking? Like do you actually have like a saturated market or an unsaturated market? How big is your product in terms of the impact it can have? How distinctive is it? Like all of those things will be factors into whether or not you're
Mm.
at risk because of the way things have changed because of the advent of AI. I think that would be my answer. It depends, but I mean, without talking to you about what you're building, like I don't know how
I'm
I would
conscious
do it.
that we're at time, and I do want to respect people's
Yeah,
diaries.
let's move to the end.
Let's move to the end. For anyone who wants to stay on and kind of meet other people on the call, it's a small group. We can stop the recording and we can kind of say hi and chat
Chill for a
more
sec.
informally.
Yeah, if we want.
But Meg, how would you like to finish off the session?
I just want to say thank you. I mean, these are the takeaways, but I think it's the framework that sort of follows the design it before you go out and do it. Try and get people to actually engage with you in a real commercial agreement, if at all possible. Design it cross-functionally, run it cross-functionally, and treat those partners as your best customers and guide them through that process because that's really how you'll make it a success. And I'm just so grateful that Amplify was willing to host this. I think it's been really fun. And if you want to be in contact, Sophia was supposed to be here today. She was unwell, so she couldn't make it. But um Sophia's information is here. And thank you so much, Valerie, for being willing to share your live example about Koala and building your framework for pilots. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it was so valuable. For anyone who can stay on, I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. Just on the process of going through it with you, Meg, it was super valuable to me. There's a lot of unknowns, and I think when you can go from feeling uncertain to feeling even like a little bit more confident when it comes to the sales, it's it's a great place to be. And I think this is the exact sort of workshop and framework that can really help you get that confidence.
Amazing. What a fantastic way to end. Thank you so
Thank
much, Meg,
you.
for hosting. Thank you to Valerie, another Amplify community member, for kind of showcasing what you're doing and using it as an example to really bring to light the work that Meg's doing. Thanks to everyone who joined. We'll just quickly show the QR code for Amplify again if anyone wants to join who hasn't already joined. I'll stop the recording, and for anyone who wants to stay on, please do. Otherwise, I wish you all well wherever you are. Thanks very much.